It should be obvious that we cannot solve a crisis with the same methods that got us into it in the first place.
This is a last chance saloon. Because if we don't really take the decisions that are vital now, it's going to be almost impossible to catch up.
We will end the moratorium on extracting our huge reserves of shale, which could get gas flowing as soon as 6 months. We'll give way.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East off. Hello and welcome to Zerocarbonista, Series 4, Fool's Gold. I'm Ian Collins, and this is the UK's #1 environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. And Dale Vince joins us with big-ass headphones on his head. What's going on, Dale?
I mean...
They're actually not that big. Some of the ones in radio studios are still massive.
Are they?
Yeah, you're like a Cyberman. You don't, but you do in the other.
A little bit. I think you're right. Because we never had cameras on before, did we? So it didn't matter. And it's kind of random, you know. Every time I turn this on, I either hear you in the laptop speakers or these work. Today it's these. So.
They look great. I think it's. I think you should.
You should get some.
Wear them on the touchline. That's what I'm saying. See how that works out. There's a lot to get through here, Dale. Some cracking questions as well. And we always urge people to keep those questions coming in. And, of course, to follow you on social media, twitter.com/Dale Vince, and the same with Facebook and Insta and TikTok and the like. So we're kind of all over it in that respect. And the more places we are, the more questions come in. So we'll get to as many as we can, along with the big kind of enviro stories of the week. Here's one to start off with. Billions worth of renewable energy projects stuck on hold. What the hell is going on?
This is a grid story. Ultimately, there's not enough grid in the country to connect all of the renewable projects that want to connect. And a lot of people are being quoted 10 or 15-year waiting times to connect their renewable energy project. And, you know, I think part of the problem is that we moved away from the early years of renewable energy when we had decentralized approach to that. We had small projects that were spread out amongst the grid and didn't require massive upgrades. We've gone to the other end of the extreme now with huge offshore wind parks, for example. And I was hearing today of a 60-acre site being set aside just for transformers to connect an offshore wind farm in Scotland. I mean, that's a huge piece of land. And these big projects basically need massive grid upgrades in order to shift the power around. And fundamentally, it's because we've gone away from the true nature of renewable energy, which is decentralization, lots of small generators blending in with the grid. But it's worth noting that there's enough energy waiting to be connected to get us to 100% green electricity. There's enough waiting.
And just to dovetail that, Dale, this is an amazing headline. Wind power generated more electricity than gas-fired power stations for the first time ever in the first 3 months of this year, according to new data. Almost a third of Britain's electricity, 32.4%, came from wind in the first quarter of 2023. Something that Jacob Rees-Mogg says is not possible.
That's right. He's not alone. I think there are a few right-wing commentators that say that's not possible. But these records keep tumbling, right? It was only a few years ago that wind overtook coal on the national grid and nuclear. And, you know, it won't be long now. We're like somewhere between 50 and 60% annually now as all forms of renewable, not just wind. And, you know, the gap that we have to close is between 40 and 50%. And as we know, that's waiting in the queue, actually, waiting for the grid to sort itself out. So 100% is totally possible. And, you know, maybe it's even possible on the timescale that Labour sets out, which is 2030, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear voices like, I might be wrongly attributing all of this to Jacob Rees-Mogg, but when you hear that kind of cynicism about it, do you think it is, A, because he's just not read up enough on this stuff and is ill-informed and listening to the wrong people, or B, because he's a
well, I'm sure that B is true, but I don't believe it's the reason. I think people like him just aren't read up as you say, you know, because like I had a chat to Nigel Farage some months ago, and the first thing he said to me was, we can't get to 100% renewable energy. So I threw him some stats and he said, okay, but we don't have enough land. And I told him it would take 1% of our land. And he said, oh, okay, but what about when the wind doesn't blow? You know, just moving from kind of myth to myth to myth, which exist in right-wing circles about why we can't get to 100% green energy. I think, what's his name? Rees-Mogg is just one of those people that doesn't understand facts, like Julia Hartley-Brewer, who told me we can't make steel without coal, oblivious to the fact that it's happening right now.
And suggested that you are trying to uninvent the wheel.
That's right. Bless.
We will never forget that moment.
No.
Here's a question from April, who emailed to zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk, who says, what is more dangerous, climate change or artificial intelligence? That's a great question.
That is a good question. I'm going to say climate change because we have hard data on that. We know it's been happening a long time. We know it's happening now, the climate crisis. We can see the impacts and we can see where it's heading. It's absolutely real. The fear over artificial intelligence is not so rooted in facts and evidence. So I'm going to go for climate change.
I think the fact that neither you or I are actually here right now, and this is just being generated through some kind of robotic quantum computing program, is maybe disturbs. Quite a lot of evidence there, though.
I think there's some evidence that that's what's been running the country the last 13 years, actually.
That's very true, and not switched on properly either. The UK government to approve massive North Atlantic oil field. Talk about a juxtaposition with our previous conversation.
This ties into something Sunak said in the House of Commons today, actually. He said we're going to need oil for decades to come. And to me, that sounded like just another kind of transitionist statement and excuse. The big oil companies say it all the time. Yeah, we get the need to stop burning fossil fuels, but not this decade or the next one or the one after. We need a transition. And here, Rishi Sunak is justifying a massive and mad investment in more fossil fuels coming out of the North Atlantic in this case, on the back of the same argument that we need them for decades to come, which is just madness. He says it would be economically illiterate not to do this, but he doesn't seem to understand that the energy crisis that we're in the middle of right now, that saw bills quadruple last winter, was a fossil fuel crisis. Not renewable energy, but a fossil fuel crisis. That's where the economic illiteracy is.
Speaking of faced Muppet, did you see Donald Trump's response when he was asked about how you're going to sort of solve the cost of living crisis in the United States? He did a CNN interview a couple of nights ago, and he said, drill, drill, and drill, baby. And that was his answer.
Wow.
And obviously the Trump fans gave a big round of applause.
But he's in trouble in court this week for some drilling, wasn't he, 20 years ago?
Yeah. It didn't look where it got him then, Yeah. So here we are. Here he is again saying this is the only way ahead, really. I mean, it's so stupidly anti-intellectual, this position, isn't it? Like, the only way as a human race, we've been developed, we do all this amazing stuff, medically, in terms of engineering, computers, artificial intelligence, we can do loads of incredible things. Look what we've done. Look how far we've moved. Look at the progress we've made over all our time on Earth. It's absolutely amazing. We invented everything from the aforementioned wheel to the place we're in now, where we can float around in, almost in drones, getting from A to B. It's fantastic. And yet, we're also simultaneously supposed to believe, according to the Trump sort of Mog-like thinking, that the only way to heat our homes is to drill into the ground. I mean, you might think that kind of comparison alone would at least spark some of these people into a reality check that, yeah, that's a good point. There must be other ways.
It is anti-factual. And I think really what's happening is it's a culture war. On the right, all of these myths are perpetuating around renewable energy. Like, there are people that say that, the energy crisis was because we've invested in green energy, for example, and we can't afford to get to net zero. And of course, we need decades to do it, and it's becoming a culture war. I think there's a real separation between people, let's say, on the left and people on the right. Sure. And this is, I think the next election will be fought over this topic in particular. I think the Tories will say, we can't afford to get to net zero. This stuff costs too much money. Yeah. We have to slow down. We have to take several decades, and we need fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. And I think Labour was saying, no, actually, we can get to 100% in a few years. It's a good investment, actually, for the country to do this. It's about jobs, clean air, and homegrown energy, actually, which can make us energy secure. I think that'll be a really vital fighting ground next election.
But like you said, Sunak is already saying Britain will need fossil fuels for a few more decades. And similarly, over in the UAE, they're saying the world is not ready to switch off fossil fuels. And that kind of comes under the banner of they would say that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, because that's the United Arab Emirates, right? One of the great oil-producing regions of the world, and so they're at least hoping that, if not believing it, and definitely wanting it to be true, that they've got a future in selling this stuff to us for decades to come. But meanwhile, you've got bodies like the IEA, the International Energy Agency, saying we have to stop drilling for new sources of oil and gas. We've got enough already. We can't afford to burn what we have, and we have to stop exploration. So there's a clear divide between people with vested interests, they work in oil and gas, politicians that want to make it a culture war issue, and on the other side, science. And actually common sense, really. We know that burning fossil fuels is causing the climate crisis, and we know we have to stop. What are we waiting for?
Hi, I'm Mike Graham from Talk TV, and I've been asked to tell you about green issues and a new book called Manifesto. It's brilliant, apparently. Do you believe in climate change? I don't. Do you believe we all need to find a greener way of living our lives? No, I don't either. I think it's all a load of guff perpetuated by loony lefties and eco-zealots hell-bent on causing a nuisance. Do you believe we're all killing our beautiful planet? No. Neither do I, but I know a fellow who does. His name's Dale Vince. He's so convinced he's written a whole book about it called Manifesto. The Battle for Green Britain. It's part memoir, part handbook for changing the world and shaking it up, apparently. I won't be buying it, but you can if you want to waste your hard-earned cash. It's $4.99. Pretty cheap, isn't it? You must be wealthy as hell. According to this script, it's available now from fgr.co.uk/shop.
Here's a question from Mick, who says, I know you've done plenty of protesting over the years, Dale. Does the Met Police treatment of suspected individuals ahead of the coronation shock you?
What was shocking about that was like the kind of preemptive nature of it. They wanted to prevent any kind of protest. And the Tory MPs afterwards justifying that by saying, look, the world was watching. So it was important that basically we didn't let them see people that are opposed to the monarchy. All of that was really incredible. But I mean, I heard the cops arrested somebody for a T-shirt that said, not my king. And, that's the kind of thing that, you might think happens in China, might happen in Russia, but, it's happening here in Britain. And the new laws the Tories have brought in to make protest harder are absolutely extreme, as extreme as anything you might find in Russia right now. And that's just so kind of scary and wrong. So shocked in a sense, yes, because, we've seen the police get kind of violent before and do bad things and lie about it and all that kind of stuff, but to snuff out a protest before it could begin for the sake of the image of Britain around the world, that was a bit shocking.
But there was still lots of protesters, so the protest still went on in that respect. And the one thing I thought was very British, because I interviewed one of the arrested protesters this week, and he gave a very good account of what they were trying to do, and I completely supported his right to be doing what he wanted to do, as I think any right-minded person would. But then a really weird thing happened, which kind of goes against the accusation of, this authoritarian sort of Chinese state police force. Because when they realized they got it wrong, they went round their houses and said sorry, which I thought it couldn't be more British than that. So we're dreadfully sorry. We really got that one wrong.
Yeah.
Now, some would say too little, too late, but it was a slight twist on authoritarianism.
No, you're right. You're right. What happened after the event made it look completely different. But during the event, it was just like completely shocking. And 2,000 people did manage to congregate in protest. But we should be able to be free in this country to simply say, we're not supporters of the monarchy. He's not my king. We don't want it. And that was a scary thing for me, that there was this kind of repression of that Republican view of life from the police, of all people.
COP28, I think, is going to be a bit of a focus for us over the next bunch of episodes, Dale, because there's a lot of strange shit going down at COP28. And here's just another installment of that. COP28 hires lobbyists who opposed oil and gas tax. This, of course, comes on the back of the fact that the person running the darn thing supports fossil fuel. I mean, the world is absolutely upside down on this one, and this is the latest part of the puzzle, it seems.
Yeah, this one I looked at, just bemused me, just read the headline like you. I thought, well, look, COP28 is becoming, something run by oil and gas lobbyists and industrialists.
It's like the BP AGM, that's all it is, really, isn't it?
That's right, without the annoying shareholders, probably. and I think there's more to come on this. COP28, it's been subverted, by the leader of a massive oil company who's the president of it. And this is just the latest kind of symptom of that takeover of COP28 by the oil and gas industry, which when you think about it, it's so bizarre. If you wrote it as a plot of a novel, it would just look too stupid.
Well, it would just be rejected, wouldn't it, as being complete? Well, that would never happen at an environmental global summit. You know, the bloke running it has got major shares in X, Y, and Z, and the lobbyist has got this, and they're inviting, you know, the board of Shell to sing a song at the end. I don't know what the hell's going on over there, but it would just be seen as simply not plausible.
That's right. And it's interesting because, I went to COP 3 and 4, actually. And COP 4 was in Buenos Aires. And it was when I first bumped into the level of subversion that was being carried out by the oil and the car companies. I infiltrated an early morning meeting with Greenpeace, at which these guys just divided up the whole day. And they sent somebody to every session, to every meeting to disrupt and slow down and throw doubt on the agenda and stuff. And, they've gone in that 20 odd years from being subversive to slow this thing down to actually leading the damn thing.
Here's a question from Dylan on Twitter. Dale, you're uploading lots of interesting video content to Facebook these days. That just sounds all shades of wrong, doesn't it, when he says that? Wait till you see Dale's OnlyFans page. That's a whole different ballgame. Dylan says, do you have your own YouTube channel yet? As I try to stay off Facebook. I don't know why Dylan stays off Facebook, but YouTube is definitely a marketplace that more people are frequenting these days, it seems.
Yeah, I have no idea. So my social media team have been quite active. We create a lot of content. We're up to a lot of things, have a lot of ideas, and we're just getting a little bit more kind of effective at putting it out across all social media channels. I don't think we're doing it on YouTube at the moment. I'll mention it to the team when I next see them. We all work remotely now, so we meet once a week.
Weather story here. There seems to be one of these on a weekly basis, almost. Vietnam this time recording highest ever temperatures, 44.1 Celsius. Never happened in that country before.
Yeah, just another one of those shocking records that have, fallen. They've got the highest ever temperature of 44 degrees, like you said, which is, is on the verge of being unlivable by human beings. And, the people there are saying, look, actually, there's a climate change expert there saying that he thinks this is just going to continue to happen. It'll be repeated many times, this temperature, and presumably increases of it. And this is with the world having only warmed by 1.1 degrees C since the industrial era began. Meanwhile, the UN say we're on course at the moment for a 3-degree temperature rise. So this crazy shit is happening with just 1 degree, and we're looking at 3 times more than that. And it's not linear. The relationship is not linear.
Maybe a lot of this is down to education. And this question from Kelly feeds into that, who says, people in elected power shouldn't be making decisions without putting the climate, biodiversity, and ecological systems at the forefront of their mind. Would you encourage or pay for carbon literacy training for all new and existing Labour councillors so they can make good decisions? Come to Brighton soon and bring Big Dunk. Also, give me a job. Open brackets, please don't read that last bit out.
Yes.
Which we just did. Well, I like the point there about opining on issues this serious without knowing anything about it. Back to Jacob Rees-Mogg again. It's a fair point, right?
Yeah, I mean, to begin at the beginning, putting the climate, biodiversity, and ecological systems at the forefront of all decision-making, that's a great idea. That hasn't happened up until now. It's all been about money, jobs, politics, that kind of stuff. But that's the kind of thing that we need to have. And there is a new Labour organisation, I forget the name because it's quite a uncatchy name, that I helped fund to get going. And their intention is to give that kind of training to Labour MPs so that they're competent in the media talking about these issues. I think this is a great idea. Labour councillors dives a level of politics deeper than that. So, I do support the idea. And, if somebody was to come to me with a proposal that needed a bit of funding, I'd take a serious look at it. Brighton, yeah, I'll try and get down there soon since the book tour was cancelled. I'm not sure about Big Dunk. He's going to have his hands full in a couple of months. We've got our first full season with him. We're obviously back in League Two. We're busy recruiting right now. I don't want to distract him with anything.
Fair point. And here's a final one to finish on, Dale. I love this story. The vegan family who confronted their neighbour about cooking meat. And they essentially put a note through their neighbour's door that says, "Hello, neighbour, comma, could you please shut your side window when cooking? My family are vegan, brackets, we eat only plant-based foods. And the smell of meat that you cook makes us feel sick and upset. Would appreciate your understanding. Thanks from Sarah, Wayne and the kids."
I think that's brilliant. I mean, on the one hand, it's super polite. And it's not very much to ask. You know, I've been in places, restaurants, other people's houses, actually, and the smell of cooking meat is sickening. It's really revolting. I'm quite sensitive to smells anyway. But, you know, when you don't eat meat, it doesn't take very long for it to become a really, surprising, revolting kind of smell, you know. And I guess if you think about what's happening as well, you know, the simmering of a piece of flesh in some fat in somebody's oven, it ain't very nice.
But what do you do if, because like a lot of people, this kind of, one of those classics, to use the phrase, it divided social media. So you have people saying, well, what if you organise a barbecue? What happens then? There's no windows to close, obviously.
No, it's really hard, isn't it? I mean, you know, I can walk around like festivals or Saturday markets, and you know, it's a big thing to cook flesh in those places, and you know, you get downwind of it, and honestly, I have to hold my breath and gags. It's really revolting to somebody who doesn't eat meat. What can you do about it? I don't know, but I know that we're eating less and less meat all of the time, so I think it's a problem that's going to solve itself eventually. I mean, I don't think it's like a massive problem, but I think fair play to that family for flagging it up to their neighbour, because now the neighbour knows, right? They can give it some consideration if they want to.
Yeah, and they only said it's a side window. They didn't say, please seal your windows and, you know,
right.
cling film your home or anything like that. It was a very polite request from Sarah, Wayne and the kids.
And it's interesting because nobody ever did that, really, as far as I understand it, about car fumes, right? For years and years, we've just accepted that other people's cars poison the air that we breathe, and our cars do it as well.
Yeah.
And it's okay because, you know, cars are important, and we just suck it up.
There it is. Dale, that's it for this episode. We'll speak in a week.
Well, nice one. Looking forward to it.
Cheers, Dale. Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. And really important, follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince, and on Insta and on TikTok
too. My favorite.
Zerocarbonista.